I'm Kate. Let's talk theater. Today we are going to be doing a week of theater news roundup, hopefully a little bit of a mix of real news and kind of TikTok brain rot news. I really hope I can give you a little bit of everything. It is Sunday night. I'm in my jammies, got some peppermint tea. It's going to be chill. It's going to be a good time. I don't know where to put my mic, so I was just going to sit here. No, I don't know what I'm doing with my background. Work with me. Let's get into it. So, we're going to start off with the top news for this week. It has to be Andrew Barth Feldman starring in Maybe Happy Ending. The PR is very with his real life girlfriend, Helen J. Shen, as if we're supposed to care. I don't know if people care? Do people think that's cute? Am I just in my bitter era? Because I don't care. Maybe I would. I didn't even know they were dating. Maybe I would care if he wasn't completely inappropriate for the role, but here we are. He is inappropriate. It's obviously gotten a lot of backlash because Maybe Happy Ending has nearly an entire cast of AAPI actors, minus the actor who plays Gil Brantley, the jazz singer, but even his understudy. Oh, my cat is screaming. Has been ejected from the room. Back to it. She always has to make an appearance. A very, very vocal appearance. Okay. All of the understudies are part of the AAPI community. Okay? I want to make that super, super clear because the argument, there's two sides of this argument, okay? I agree with this side, that this is a show set in Korea. It's a show that has used the fact that it has AAPI casting, that it has this culture. They are showcasing, right, these actors. It's all a part of their marketing. Darren Criss became the first actor of AAPI descent to win his Tony. It is definitely a part of the identity of the show. I will say anecdotally, I saw more people of Asian descent at this show than any other show, right? Usually you go to a Broadway show and you see like old white people. And there's nothing wrong with old white people. I hope to become one day. I have many old white people in my family. But like that tends to be the heavily leaning demographic. This is definitely a show that clearly was attracting the audience that they wanted. And you could also see that in the voices that were then talking about it and celebrating it online. So for the show to come out and cast a very, very white person, and I say that as a very, very white person, is nuts. I don't care that they're dating, and I think they're trying to use that to almost pre-apologize, or like, I think they're trying to say, hey, she's cool with it. This Asian woman is cool with him being cast because they're in love. So don't yell at us. That's what it feels like to me, that they're jumping right to that side of the PR. Now, the other argument on the flip side is that it's not a big deal, that he's talented, and also that in workshops they have used people of various racial identities, which is true. They have used, Danae Denton was in a workshop, Corey Cott was in a workshop. It is true that they have not always exclusively wanted to cast Asian actors, but again, look at this cast. There's one white person in it, and it's the American jazz singer. And even his understudy is Asian. If they had understudies of varying races, maybe I would believe them, but they don't. And I want to point out, so Will Aronson is the composer, lyricist, and book writer, and he actually mentions in this article with the LA Times that at one point they did have Danae Denton and Corey Cott in the workshop. Then our thinking was they're robots. Then our thinking was they're robots. They could be of any background. But if the audience only has a few moments to define the setting, it helps that the protagonists are cast Asian. Helen J. Shen said, talking to people at the stage door, there are so many Asian faces. People are excited to see either themselves reflected on stage or just something that doesn't fit what we've become accustomed to seeing. Me embodying this character and standing in this building is a revolution in and of itself. So I point some of this out to say, again, they've used this in their marketing. They've been very open about this. Again, in this article, Darren Criss mentions that while he is Asian, he is also white passing and acknowledges that and identifies that the AAPI community in the arts is a smaller, if not marginalized, group. It's important, and I hope this show can continue to have that legacy and be an inspiring call to action in other artistic spheres. So there's a lot here. Let me see. Justin Scribner, production stage manager. And I'll stop reading these and I'll link it below. I'm excited for Asian artists to see themselves in this piece that's not about Asian trauma. And he mentions Miss Saigon and The King and I, sort of these, you only see so many Asian roles. So I point some of this out to say how clear they as a production have made it. That this is a show that is meant to reflect Asian culture. You're supposed to be seeing Asian people represented on stage. And this came out March 27th, 3 months before this casting announcement. And so the upset comes from this show very much building this brand, saying this is what we're trying to do. And then the first chance they get to cast a new person, they cast a white person. Yeah, and you're seeing a lot on TikTok, online. Comments are exploding in all the different Broadway world, Playbill, maybe Happy Ending themselves, posting these things. You're seeing voices from all different racial identities, but a lot of Asian voices saying, hey, this is not right. Are you seeing white creators say, oh, but they're robots, they don't have race? Be serious. Have media literacy, have respect for a community, and look at what the show itself said. They are walking back these statements. They created this community, they created this brand, and they took it away. And it's to me that simple. To be seen if they will respond. I personally believe that we should be holding Andrew Barth Feldman to some level of account. He chose to take this job. Yes, it's a job. People need a job. People need a contract. But so did an Asian actor, right? So to sit here, would we be having this conversation if it was a less ambiguous, like if it was a role that less people could kind of get away with saying, oh, they're just robots? I don't know, right? If we were talking about a West Side Story, if we were talking about an In the Heights, would people be embarrassing themselves this much, bending over backwards to try to say it's okay to cast Andrew Barth Feldman? I don't know. But I do think, a white person taking a role that clearly wasn't written for them, at a certain point, there's a level of accountability. Do I think he's the utmost responsible? No, a ton of people had to make this decision. Ultimately, it's the show's job to protect their brand and kind of move forward on essentially a promise that they made through a lot of this marketing, through a lot of the publicity that they put out there and a lot of the messaging that they put out there. But I do think we need to be real about everyone in this situation having some level of accountability, right? You're at the end of the day, at the very least, everyone involved is some level of complicit in this. And we need to stop acting like he just accidentally got this role, right? Because being complicit in this doesn't make it okay, right? Again, we all saw Cabaret, right? You can't just let the people do this crummy thing and then say, oh, well, it wasn't my job to tell them not to do that, right? It was my job to say, no, they offered. So, yeah, that's kind of my take. I do think they really need to speak to this and at the very least do some serious damage control and really speak to how they're just suddenly undoing this narrative, again, that they created. And I think that's ultimately the biggest problem. If they didn't sell this show on being, oh, we're this Asian representation. We see how important it is. Oh my God, come see our show. Give us the Tonys. As soon as they win the Tony, they backtrack and hire the guy that I frankly only know as Linguini in Ratatouille the musical. Is this guy even famous? I mean, that's what's even crazier to me. Can we take a second? Because I keep seeing people say, well, we need to get a name for ticket sales. That's not a name. Andrew Barth Feldman is not a name. If they hired an actually famous white guy, okay, you can make that argument. When Aaron Tveit stars in Maybe Happy Ending, we can have that argument, okay? But Andrew Barth Feldman, like, be serious. Be serious. I'm not saying he's not talented or a proper working actor. Like, I've heard of him. But he's not, like, Darren Criss is famous in the Broadway world and the world of TV. Like, he has a level of fame that Andrew Barth Feldman is nowhere near. And that's okay. But the argument can't be, well, they had to cast Andrew Barth Feldman. He's just so talented and famous. No. Be serious. Be serious. But speaking of being complicit and speaking of Cabaret, another controversy has been Billy Porter. Billy Porter was in an interview on CBS Mornings. I can never tell any of these shows apart, so I did have to check. Talking about Cabaret, I think people have already been skeptical of Billy Porter's Cabaret, given how vocally exaggerated it is for a role that is pretty inappropriate to be doing that. Like, I think people have been pointing out, especially with Eva Noblezada, how pretty she sounds. And I think that there's merit to having that conversation of, like, she's not necessarily not famous because she's bad. I never understood the idea that Sally is supposed to be bad when she was literally played by, like, Liza Minnelli in the movie. And I feel like that's the most accessible version. That's the most available version. But it sort of brought this narrative of, like, she's a woman of color. Like, there are other reasons and variables as to why she may not be as famous doing as well in her career, right? Gotten as far. She also drinks constantly, has a terrible work ethic. Okay, there's a lot going on. But I think there are moments that Sally Bowles can genuinely have really good vocals. And I think Eva Noblezada played that really beautifully. Her Cabaret left me in, like, fight or flight. I wish the show would have just paid her and Orville Peck any amount of money to continue through the rest of the run, because what I would have done to go see them again. So Billy Porter, we're already a little bit skeptical of Billy Porter as a community. I don't particularly have an opinion on him because I feel like he's just not super been on my radar as an entity. But then he went on to talk about... So I'm editing, and I wanted to add a little bit of context to what I'm going to talk about, in that, in general, Billy Porter is talking about his experience playing the MC as a black man and how he is adding his experience as a person of color to this role, as oftentimes the harm that people of color experienced in that time, being vague for YouTube, is forgotten, is not kind of a part of the story, and how his presence can add this extra layer, and how he may play that role differently because of that, because of his experience. That's a conversation we're having in a lot of shows right now, right? The way in which people are, as they are showing up in their own life and then bringing these extra layers to the role, how an audience can suddenly look at a role very differently. All of that is a genuine conversation to be had, and it's great that Billy Porter is bringing that to the role. What I'm talking about for the rest of this video and the controversy is this one quote in particular, where it was a very foot and mouth moment. It was likely not meant to be offensive the way it came off. It came off very kind of comparing trauma. And so what I'm really talking about is just that one quote and people's reactions to that one quote that I will talk about. Not the overall message that Billy Porter was otherwise communicating. and again how he has not further clarified, nor has like any team, Cabaret, anything like that as of the making of this video. I thought I wanted to add that because I feel like that was not clear. And so what Billy Porter said is that this is the first time in the 60-year history that all three of those characters have been African American in a commercial production. So we're talking about the three main characters in Cabaret. And with what's going on in the world right now, Black people have replaced the Jews in this sort of configuration of what we're going through. That made people very mad. What is he even saying? I don't know. TikTok popped off, rightfully so, talking about how it kind of implied that Jewish people are not facing discrimination, which is obviously inaccurate, like just statistically. And it is frankly not necessary to compare, right? To be playing sort of this trauma Olympics. Everybody's experiences are valid, and we don't have to say one group is being more discriminated against, being more harmed than another. It isn't necessary. And it's not helpful, right, to then be pitting discriminated groups against each other rather than actually looking at the people in power, the oppressor, right? You're just fighting each other. Who is that helping? Will there be a response? I would imagine no, because they should have had that response immediately. And this is something I'm seeing in the Broadway community, I think, is just this lack of really basic accountability. We're maybe happy ending, right? Billy Porter, he made a statement that was borderline incoherent. So I would give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not Jewish. I'm not part of that community. It is not my apology to accept. But I would not be surprised, based off of how incoherent that sentence in general was, that he didn't mean that. And all it would take would be him explaining it, right? But I feel like, and we saw this with Nick Jonas supporting Elon Musk, then Nick Jonas goes on to play a Jewish person. And there's just this complete lack of like really basic PR happening on Broadway right now. We're seeing it with Scott Rudin, who's going on to produce a show, and nobody is acknowledging his past, right? And it's just like, oftentimes vague PR statements and apologies are not truly enough, but there's something, to me, there's something insidious about the fact, there's something dark about the fact that we don't even get those anymore. You say something that makes people very offended. In the Jewish community, you're in Cabaret, and your team and Cabaret's team, nobody cares. Nick Jonas comes out with a statement that could be seen as offensive to the Jewish community. And not Nick Jonas's team, not the last 5 years' team, felt, just put something out. You need to say something, right? I do wonder if brands of all kinds are coming to rely on our short attention spans. If this is sort of a downside of this, we're watching 30-second long videos, we're being rage baited so constantly, the internet is talking about a new thing every day, every hour. I do wonder if brands are starting to essentially win the game by just waiting it out and letting things kind of die out of the algorithm. And do we, as the community who's supposed to care about these things, the theater community, need to really do better at taking the serious things seriously? That it's not just drama online. Because if we treat it like it's just drama online, it's out of the algorithm in a day or two or three. And the brands can kind of forget about it. And I think it also goes to think about, what is the theater community online versus the ticket buyer, right? My feet are asleep because I was sitting on them. Hold on. Like, Is the theater community online truly representative of the ticket buyer? There's obviously overlap, but it's likely not representative. And I would imagine that most people in a Broadway theater at any given time have no idea about any of this. Have no idea what I'm talking about right now. And maybe the producers, the whoever's, rely on that. You know, money talks. At the end of the day, Broadway is a business. And likely, the people with the biggest wallets, or at least the biggest portion in that theater, paying the biggest portion of their grosses for the week, don't know any of this. And so the more, if a brand brings it up themselves, maybe it ups the likelihood that the average consumer knows about it. This was supposed to be like a whole week of theater roundup, and I feel like I need to just focus on these two kind of controversies, right? Like, I don't know. Solution is an Instagram post the perfect solution? No, but is a PR statement a perfect solution? No, but it's something. Where are we if brands don't even feel the need to give some level of like common courtesy and decency and acknowledgement of a slip like that? I don't know. With maybe happy ending, I don't plan on going while Andrew Barth Feldman is there. Our wallet is our power. I will not be supporting that. There is concern, right? That, you know, if there's enough backlash, does it hurt their bottom line? Do they close? People say it happened with Great Comet. I say people say because I was not tuned into that at all at the time. My thoughts are advanced ticket sales keep shows open, as far as I am aware. I'm not a business person, I'm not an expert, but from my understanding, advanced ticket sales can really help keep a show open. Andrew Barth Feldman is only in for 9 weeks. Book tickets for when he's gone. He starts September 2nd. Look at when he leaves in November. Get in there. Buy them for the holiday season, right? You don't want the show to close, and you also want to make a statement that, hey, we don't want to see this guy. Maybe that's a way to do it. The show could buy him out of his contract, likely, if they wanted to kind of save themselves the embarrassment. Who's to say they have the money for that? I don't know, right? But allegedly, right, Hadestown was kind of ready for Reeve Carney to move on. Allegedly, they wanted Jordan Fisher in sooner. Allegedly, they bought Reeve out so that Jordan Fisher could come in earlier. You know, it is probably possible. They messed up. Do they need to eat these costs, or do they assume they can get away with it? I mean, we're seeing people again say, well, he's really talented, he's really great, I want to see the couple together, it's just a robot. And again, that's just the internet. There's going to be a whole bunch of tourists, a whole bunch of people who have no idea the meaning behind this role, right? And so will the show feel like they really need to do anything? I would love to know, and this is like something that should be studied, truly, like the impact of the theater community on the internet, right? Like, we know you kind of need a little bit of everyone to keep a show going, because you really need that max capacity, right? So it's like you need the tourists, you need the locals, right? You need the theater lovers who are doing the rush lines. You also need the advanced ticket buyers. Like, you really need a little bit of everything to keep most shows going, unless it's like the Wickeds, the Lion Kings, right? Like, you need all of these different segments. The people who are going to the same show 20 times need to be showing up just as much as the people who see one show a year, right? Like, you need all these different kinds of people. I would say the average show needs that to kind of keep at capacity. And so, does a moment like this make enough of a dent in a show's capacity, in a show's ticket sales, to get them listening or not? And if it doesn't, does the theater community on the internet, which I'm obviously a part of, need to change their ways? I think it's very often focused on yapping on the internet, which I'm literally doing right now, but true advocacy goes beyond that. And, you know, I did notice, I actually looked up, let me look it up, but you see this a lot, I would say, with any theater issues. It's a lot of yapping. It's a lot of yapping on the internet, which you have to start somewhere. But I do believe that if you really want to make any changes, like, true advocacy is not just yapping on the internet. And so I would love to know your thoughts below. What are your thoughts on some of these things? What needs to get done? I was supposed to do more of a roundup of theater news, but I think that these are the big stories, and I want to give these big stories room to breathe, and probably, who cares about anything else? This is all the internet's been talking about. So, yeah, I don't know. I think likely the theater community online only makes so much of a dent. How much of a dent do we make? And if you want to make real change, you probably have to make a bigger dent. You probably have to find means of getting your message across in other ways. I did notice, that's what I was looking up. Oh my God. There's really no big name publications talking about why this is problematic. I found one blog on Google about the controversy on Stage blog. Playbill, Broadway World, any like traditional news publication that you've probably heard of, I did not see upon a quick Google search anything about like an op-ed or anything. Is that the next step, right? How do you get publications involved in this that maybe then the more average theater goer is seeing? Like, you need to reach average theater goers where they're at. They're not on TikTok. They're not in my TikTok algorithm. They're not seeing me here on YouTube, right? So thinking about what advocacy really looks like. And I wonder too, where are the other Broadway stars? How safe do Broadway stars, like larger names, feel to talk about this kind of stuff? You know, why are the other actors in Maybe Happy Ending okay with this? Do they fear for their jobs? Are there AAPI actors in Broadway that feel comfortable bringing this up? Or because of this exact issue constantly happening, do they not feel safe to bring this up? So then where is an ally who is in a better position, whose career is more protected, talking about this, right? I mean, that's really, I think, the people to look to are like the people who have the power and are likely protected given their status and fame. Where are they to speak up? Why aren't they speaking up? What is going on there? How do we get this to be a bigger conversation if as a theater community we think something is important enough to do that, right? So it was a little bit more rambly than I expected. This really took a turn, but some controversies. And I think, again, these are two examples, but they're not the only examples. They both just kind of happen to happen at the same time. But I think in general, it does bring up an interesting conversation about shows. And yes, they're a business, but they also clearly utilize the community to advertise, to build. Shows need community, especially new works, right? And so there can be a symbiotic relationship. So how does the community have expectations and really push those expectations forward when the community as a conglomerate so chooses? And why are we seeing shows making these decisions that are clearly not going to be liked, or just someone saying something offensive, maybe putting their foot in their mouth why do they not feel the need to just clarify, apologize, what have you, right? What is going on that shows brands, entities don't feel the need to do that? What are we as a society, as a community, doing wrong that they think that they don't even owe us like really basic PR decency anymore? I don't know. So this is so cold. Yeah, no. All right, I drank most of it, so it's fine. So that's a little bit of a roundup of like kind of the two big theater news / what it kind of became on social media. I would love to know your thoughts about these things below. Anything else happened this past week that I missed and that I didn't talk about that you want to talk about? Obviously, there's a lot of little news and events and things being announced here and there that I didn't talk about. Let me know your thoughts below. If you want to see me randomly have thoughts on some of those other little moments, you can follow me on TikTok. I have some additional short form content on there. It is just at Theater Kates. As for YouTube, if you could like, subscribe, share the video if you enjoyed it. And I would really appreciate it. It helps me out, kind of continue to build this community here. Like I said, I want to keep doing kind of some roundup videos. Let me melt my brain on TikTok for you. Now, these were obviously some more important topics. Likely, we will not always get hit with the very important topics when it comes to controversy, but these are ones that really blew up in the TikTok space and in the online space, but we did not see really grow beyond that into the more mainstream media of it all. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, and I will see you next time to talk more theater. Bye!